You have 72 hours to remove that eyesore boat or we're taking legal action. That's what the HOA president screamed at me while standing on my dock, on my lake, on my property. I'm Barbara Pierce, and this is the story of how one entitled woman tried to steal a 200-acre lake from me, and how 130-year-old water rights documents destroyed her entire empire. Let me back up 3 weeks to when this nightmare started. I was sitting in a stuffy lawyer's office in Denver, the smell of old leather and legal documents thick in the air, when I learned I'd inherited something that would change my life forever. My grandfather, Captain Thomas Pierce, had died at 91, leaving me his Pine Lake property in the Colorado Rockies. Your grandfather was very specific in his instructions, Attorney Miller said, sliding a thick manila envelope across his mahogany desk. He wanted you, specifically, to have the lake house, not your siblings, not your cousins. You. I hadn't seen Grandpa Tom in 5 years. Life got complicated after my divorced 2 kids, a struggling boat repair business, an ex-husband who forgot child support existed. But Grandpa Tom always believed in me. He'd taught me everything about boats, water systems, and lake ecology when I was a kid, spending summers at Pine Lake. The property was stunning, a rustic 2-story log cabin perched on the western shore of Pine Lake, with a private dock, boathouse, and 200 feet of pristine shoreline. The lake itself stretched across 200 acres of crystal-clear mountain water, surrounded by pine forests and granite cliffs that turned gold at sunset. There's one unusual thing, Miller continued, pulling out another document. Your grandfather held some very old water rights connected to this property. I haven't fully researched them, but they date back to 1893. Might be worth looking into. I barely heard him. I was too busy imagining my kids, Mia and Jake, learning to fish off that dock like I had, building something stable after years of chaos. The cabin needed work-rotting boards, outdated electrical, a roof that had seen better decades. But I'm a marine technician. I know how to fix things. I moved in on a Saturday morning in late April. The mountain air was crisp with pine scent, and the promise of new beginnings. My truck was packed with tools, my kids' favorite furniture, and 3 years of divorce court stress. I was ready to leave behind. The cabin was better than I'd hoped. Sure, the kitchen appliances were from the Reagan administration, and the bathroom tile had questionable 1970s vibes. But the bones were solid. Lake-facing windows framed views that belonged in nature magazines. The dock needed repair, but the boathouse was structurally sound. I spent the first week doing basic repairs, replacing rotted decking, fixing a leaking roof, updating the electrical panel using skills from my marine technician certification. Mia and Jake were coming next weekend, and I wanted everything perfect for their first visit, to what I hoped would become their second home. Day 9, she arrived. A pristine white Lexus SUV pulled into my gravel driveway, completely out of place against the rustic mountain backdrop. Out stepped a woman who looked like she'd gotten lost on the way to a country club luncheon. Pamela Harrington emerged wearing a cream-colored business suit with heels that had no business on a gravel driveway. Mid-50s, perfectly styled blonde hair, and an expression that screamed, "I'd like to speak to your manager." Her perfume, something expensive and overwhelming, clashed violently with the fresh pine air. "Excuse me," she announced, clicking across my property like she owned it. "Are you the individual who's moved into the Pierce property?" I set down my power drill, noting how, she said, individual like it left a bad taste in her mouth. "Barbara Pierce. And you are?" "Pamela Harrington, Pine Lake Homeowners Association President." She produced a leather portfolio with theatrical authority. "We need to discuss several urgent matters regarding your property's compliance with community standards." I looked around at wilderness stretching in every direction. What? Community. I see trees and water. The Pine Lake HOA governs all residential properties within our jurisdiction, Pamela said, flipping through official-looking papers. There are 47 homes around this lake, all members of our association. Your grandfather was exempt due to a grandfather clause that expired with his death. You're now subject to our covenants. She handed me a document titled Notice of Immediate Violations. My jaw dropped. $8,500. In accumulated fines, 4. Dock structure non-compliance, $2,000. Unauthorized watercraft storage, $1,500. Failure to maintain aesthetic standards, $3,000. Unapproved exterior modifications, $2,000. This is insane, I said, scanning the list. I've been here 9 days. How can I owe $8,500? These violations existed before your arrival, Pamela explained with practiced patience. Your grandfather refused to comply with community standards for years. As the new owner, you've inherited his obligations. My grandfather was here since 1952. Your HOA probably formed 5 minutes ago. Pamela's smile tightened. 17 years ago? Actually, and we've been very patient with your grandfather's eccentricities, but that patience has expired. She pointed at my dock with a manicured finger. That structure violates lake aesthetic guidelines. It needs to be rebuilt to HOA specifications at your expense. The boathouse must be painted pine forest green, not that horrible barn red. And that, she gestured at my grandfather's beloved 1978 Kreiskraft Catalina. That boat is an eyesore that reduces everyone's property values. The Kreiskraft was a classic. Sure, it needed restoration, but it was a piece of lake history. My grandfather had restored it himself over 5 summers. I'd helped him sand and varnish that hull when I was 15. Let me be frank, Ms. Pierce. Pamela's voice dropped into what she probably thought was a friendly tone. This isn't the type of property owner we cultivate in Pine Lake. We maintain certain standards about who belongs here and who doesn't. The implication was crystal clear. I was a divorced single mom with calloused hands and a truck that had seen better years. She was looking at my work clothes, my practical boots, and deciding I wasn't Pine Lake material. You have 72 hours to remove that boat from the lake, Pamela announced. After that, daily fines of $500 begin. We recommend you consider selling to someone more compatible with our community values. This is my property, I said, anger rising. My lake. Access. My dock. Pamela's laugh was sharp as winter wind. Actually, Miss Pierce, the lake is communal property, shared by all HOA members. Your grandfather's primitive understanding of property rights doesn't apply anymore. We've modernized. She climbed back into her Lexus, but paused before driving off. Don't make this harder than necessary. People who fight us tend to regret it. As her taillights disappeared down the mountain road, my hands were shaking with fury. I'd spent 2 years fighting my ex-husband's lawyers. I'd rebuilt my entire life from bankruptcy. And now, some country club Karen wanted to steal my inheritance because my boat wasn't pretty enough. I walked down to the dock, breathing in lake water and pine sap, trying to calm down. That's when I noticed them. 4 speedboats tied to my dock. Expensive watercraft that definitely didn't belong to me, using my slip space like it was a public marina. I checked the registration numbers. 3 belonged to HOA board members. 1 was registered to Pamela Harrington's husband, Richard. These people had been treating my grandfather's dock like their personal boat parking for who knows how long. And now they wanted me to remove my boat because it was an eyesore. I called the number on the HOA letter. A chirpy voice answered. Pine Lake, HOA, this is Brittany. Barbara Pierce. I need copies of all HOA documents, financial records, and the covenants Ms. Harrington mentioned. Colorado law says I have the right within 10 business days. Pause. I'll need to check with Mrs. Harrington about that. It's not a request. It's Colorado Revised Statutes, Section 38 to 33.3 to 209. 10 business days or the HOA faces penalties. I'll have someone get back to you. That night, I dug through the boxes of Grandpa Tom's papers stored in the cabin's attic. The musty smell of old documents and decades of family history filled my nose as I searched through manila folders and leather-bound ledgers. Most of it was routine property tax receipts, insurance policies, repair invoices for the cabin. But in the bottom of a cedared chest, beneath photos of my grandmother and newspaper clippings about Grandpa Tom's Navy service, I found something that made my heart stop. A tin box painted military green, locked with a combination lock. The metal was cold and heavy in my hands, scratched from decades of storage. There was a note taped to the top in Grandpa Tom's shaky handwriting. "Barbara, if you're reading this, someone's probably trying to steal what's yours. Don't let them." Combination 0714, your mom's birthday. The lake has secrets they don't know. Use them. Them. My hands trembled as I spun the combination. 0714. Click. The lock opened. Inside were documents that would change everything. Property deeds, water rights certificates, survey maps, legal correspondence dating back over a century. And sitting on top, a letter in Grandpa Tom's handwriting dated 3 months before he died. "Dear Barbara," I read aloud in the quiet attic. "If you're opening this, it means Pamela Harrington or one of her cronies is trying to push you around. They've been trying to steal the lake for years, but I've kept the secret that protects our family. Now it's yours to protect." The documents in this box prove something those HOA vultures don't know. Pine Lake isn't communal property. It's private, and you own it. Not just the house, not just the dock, the entire lake. All 200 acres of water, the lake bed, and every dock, pier, and boat slip anyone built without permission, which is all of them. I bought the water rights in 1953 from the original homesteader's estate. Cost me every penny I'd saved, but it was worth it. The Pierce family owns Pine Lake, and we always will. Don't let them steal what I fought to preserve. Love, Grandpa Tom. I read it 3 times. Then I pulled out the documents. Pike County Water Rights Certificate, issued April 3, 1893, to homesteader Jacob Morrison. Transferred to Morrison Family Trust, 1901, sold to Thomas J. Pierce, U.S. Navy, retired, January 15, 1953, for $4,800. The certificate was yellowed with age but officially stamped and notarized. It granted exclusive rights to all water, lakebed minerals, and surface use of the body of water, known as Pine Lake, comprising approximately 200 acres in Pike County, Colorado. Attached were survey maps from 1893 showing the lake boundaries, matched perfectly with modern topographic maps I'd seen. Legal opinions from 3 different attorneys across 3 decades, all confirming the water rights were valid, transferable, and superseded any later formed community agreements. There was more. A 1985 letter from an attorney to Grandpa. "Tom, Mr. Pierce, we've reviewed the Pine Lake HOA covenants as you requested. Their claim to lake access as communal property is legally invalid. You own the water rights, which means you control all access. The HOA members are technically trespassing every time they use their docks, which are built on your lakebed without permission. You could legally demand removal of all structures and prohibit all lake access by none. However, as you've stated, you prefer to avoid conflict and allow neighbors peaceful use. This is admirable, but creates no legal precedent weakening your ownership. The lake is yours." I sat back, the weight of revelation pressing on my chest. Pamela Harrington had been threatening me about lake violations, but every dock in the HOA, all 47 of them, was built on property I owned. Every boat slip, every jet ski platform, every swimming platform was unauthorized construction on my lakebed, and if Grandpa Tom had been letting them use it peacefully for years without asserting rights, that was courtesy, not legal precedent. The lake was still mine. I pulled out my phone and called Attorney Miller in Denver. Got his voicemail. Left a message. "Mr. Miller, it's Barbara Pierce. Remember those old water rights you mentioned? I found them, all of them, and I think I'm going to need a very good real estate attorney very quickly. The next morning brought Pamela's next move. I woke to the sound of power tools and male voices shouting near my dock. I threw on jeans and a sweatshirt, running outside to find 3 men in Pine Lake HOA polo shirts, dismantling my boathouse. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted over the shriek of circular saws cutting through support beams. Tech crew boss, a thick-necked guy with a clipboard, barely looked up. "HOA, emergency removal, order. This structure's condemned as unsafe, insurance, liability. You can't just demolish my property." He handed me a paper. "HOA emergency powers clause, immediate removal of hazardous structures. You can file an appeal after demolition." I watched in horror as they tore apart my grandfather's boathouse. Attorney Miller's office smelled like expensive coffee and old money when I walked in, carrying Grandpa Tom's metal box like it held nuclear launch codes. Which, in a legal sense, it did. "Ms. Pierce," Miller said, adjusting his reading glasses as I spread the documents across his conference table. "I thought you were calling about a simple HOA dispute. This is extraordinary. Examine it. 1893 water rights certificate under a magnifying lamp, checking watermarks, official seals, and notary stamps with the focus of a jeweler inspecting diamonds." The afternoon sunlight streaming through his windows made the old paper glow like aged parchment. "These are legitimate," he finally said. "Properly filed, legally transferred, completely valid. Miss Pierce, you don't just own lake access, you own the lake. Every dock, pier, and boat slip around Pine Lake is built on your property without authorization. Can the HOA claim adverse possession? They've been using the lake for years." Miller shook his head. "Not in Colorado. Adverse possession requires hostile, exclusive use." For 18 years, minimum, the HOA members aren't using the lake hostilely. They believe they have permission, and it's not exclusive if 47 families are all using it simultaneously. Your grandfather's tolerance doesn't create legal precedent. So, what's my play? Miller leaned back in his leather chair, the kind that costs more than my truck. Nuclear option, you assert full water rights. Demand removal of all unauthorized structures. Prohibit all lake access, except by your permission. Essentially, you evict 47 families from a lake they thought they owned. Tatese. That seems extreme. It is. Which is why I don't recommend it unless absolutely necessary. But here's the beautiful part. The threat alone gives you unlimited leverage. This Pamela Harrington has been threatening you with HOA violations. She's committed years of trespassing on your property. She demolished your boathouse. That's destruction of property on land she doesn't own. She impounded your boat. That's theft of property from your private dock. He pulled out a legal pad and started sketching strategy. We need to do 3 things immediately. First, file a formal declaration of water rights with Pike County. Second, send cease and desist letters to the HOA board. Third, sue for damages related to the boathouse demolition and boat theft. How much will this cost me? Miller smiled. Given the value of what you're protecting, I'll work on contingency. When we win, and we will win, the HOA will pay all legal fees plus damages. This is the kind of case law firms dream about. But Miller was a civil attorney. I needed someone who specialized in HOA warfare. He referred me to Sarah Drummond, a Denver attorney with a reputation for destroying corrupt homeowner associations. Sarah's office was nothing like Miller's wood-paneled sanctuary. It was modern, minimalist, with walls covered in framed news articles about HOA victories. The centerpiece, a photo of Sarah standing in front of a dissolved HOA headquarters with the caption "Justice Served." "Barbara Pierce," Sarah said, shaking my hand with a grip that could crush walnuts. She was 40-something, wearing practical business casual with the focused intensity of a wolf that spotted wounded prey. Miller sent me your documents. This is the most beautiful thing I've seen in years. She spread Grandpa Tom's papers across her desk, like a general planning invasion. Here's what we're dealing with. Pamela Harrington isn't just a power-hungry HOA president. She's positioning for something much bigger. Sarah pulled up financial records on her computer. 3 months ago, a development company called Mountain Marine Ventures filed preliminary plans with Pike County for a luxury marina and boat club on Pine Lake. Capacity for 200 boats, upscale restaurant, private beach club, helicopter pad for wealthy Denver clients. On our lake. That's insane. Hit better. The development requires acquiring control of the entire lake and all dock rights. Mountain Marine has been quietly offering HOA members buyouts, $20,000 per household to surrender their dock rights and lake access. Sarah clicked to another document. Pamela Harrington is listed as community liaison for the project. She's earning a $400,000 consultant fee for facilitating community cooperation. The pieces clicked together like a puzzle. Pamela wasn't trying to drive me out because my boat was ugly. She needed to control all lake access to deliver the marina deal. My property, with its prime location and historical water rights, was the key piece she couldn't acquire. So she's been harassing me to force a sale. Worse, she's been systematically buying out her neighbors while portraying you as the troublemaker, preventing a deal that would benefit everyone. In HOA meetings you haven't been invited to, she's been claiming you're the selfish outsider blocking economic development. Sarah pulled up more records. 17 families have already sold their dock rights to Mountain Marine. Pamela's collecting commission on each sale. She's made over $100,000 so far, with another $300,000 coming if she delivers total lake access. But she can't deliver lake access. I own the water rights. Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. Exactly. Which means every contract she's signed, every promise she's made, every dollar she's collected, it's all fraud. She's been selling something she doesn't own and has no authority to deliver. What's our move? Sarah cracked her knuckles like a boxer preparing for the ring. We're going to file a lawsuit that makes Pamela Harrington wish she'd never heard of Pine Lake. Fraudulent misrepresentation, theft by deception, trespassing, and destruction of property. Then we're going to very publicly file your water rights declaration, so every HOA member learns the truth. Won't that hurt innocent families who bought dock rights thinking they were legitimate? That's between them and Pamela, who lied to them. But here's the thing, Barbara, you're not the villain. You're the property owner trying to protect what's yours. Pamela weaponized your neighbors against you by lying about who actually owns what. When the truth comes out, their anger will redirect exactly where it belongs. We spent the next 3 hours building the legal case that would destroy Pamela's world. Every document photographed, every transaction tracked, every lie documented. Sarah's investigator would dig into Mountain Marine's financing, Pamela's consulting contracts, and the HOA's financial records. This will take about 2 weeks to file properly, Sarah said as I prepared to leave. In the meantime, document everything Pamela does. Every threat, every fine, every communication. She's going to escalate when she realizes you're not backing down, and her desperation will be evidence. She was right. I'd barely made it home when the harassment began in earnest. The next morning, I woke to find all 4 tires on my truck slashed. Someone had spray-painted "Go Home" across my cabin's front door in neon orange. And my mailbox had been demolished, lying in the driveway like a murder victim. I documented everything with photos, timestamps, and detailed notes. Then I drove to the Pike County Sheriff's Office on spare tires to file a report. Deputy Martinez was sympathetic but realistic. "Ma'am, I believe you, but without witnesses or security footage, there's not much we can investigate. These mountain communities can get ... territorial about outsiders. I'm not an outsider. I inherited this property. I understand. But perception matters up here. My advice, install security cameras and document everything. If it escalates to direct threats, we can act. I spent that afternoon installing a comprehensive security system, motion sensors, night vision cameras, audio recording. If Pamela wanted to play dirty, I'd have evidence in 4K resolution. The cameras proved their worth that very night. Around 2 a.m., a pickup truck crept down my driveway with headlights off. 2 men emerged, both wearing Pine Lake HOA polo shirts, carrying what looked like surveying equipment. They weren't surveying. They were stealing. I watched through my laptop as they loaded my dock's floating sections onto their truck, methodically dismantling the structure my grandfather had built. I called 911. There are men stealing my dock. Ma'am, are you sure they're stealing? Could they be performing authorized maintenance? At 2 in the morning, without my permission, on my private property. Deputies arrived 20 minutes later, just as the thieves were loading the last section. Turns out, they were HOA maintenance contractors executing an emergency removal order for unsafe structures. Show me the court order authorizing property removal, Deputy Martinez demanded. The contractors looked at each other nervously. We have an HOA authorization letter. An HOA authorization letter doesn't override private property rights. Unload that equipment immediately, or you're both getting arrested for theft. The contractors unloaded my dock sections in sullen silence. After they left, Martinez handed me his card. Miss Pierce, you need to get a restraining order against this HOA president. This is harassment bordering on stalking. The next morning brought Pamela's most brazen move yet. She called an emergency HOA meeting without inviting me to vote on special assessment fees to cover legal costs, defending community interests against hostile property owner. My neighbor, an elderly man named Frank Chun, who lived 3 houses down, knocked on my door that afternoon. The smell of rain was building in the mountain air, and Frank looked nervous as a cat in a dog park. Ms. Pierce, I don't know you well, but I wanted to warn you. Pamela's telling everyone you're trying to steal the lake. She's saying you're planning to fence it off, charge fees for dock access, maybe even prohibit swimming. That's insane! I just want to live peacefully on property I inherited. Frank nodded. I believe you, but you should note, one of the families voted to approve a $50,000 legal fund to fight whatever you're planning. Pamela convinced them you're the threat. Did she mention that she's been selling lake access rights she doesn't own? Frank's eyes widened. What? I showed him copies of the water rights documents and mountain marine contracts. Watched his face cycle through shock, anger, and betrayal. She's been collecting money from people for dock rights to a lake she doesn't own. That's exactly what she's doing. And when the marina deal falls through, because I own the water rights, all those contracts become worthless. Frank sat on my porch steps, age and worry evident in his weathered face. There are good people in this community who've been lied to. When the truth comes out, Pamela's going to face consequences. But Miss Pierce, you should know she's dangerous when cornered. How dangerous? 3 years ago, a couple tried to fight her about HOA fees. They found their brake lines cut. No proof, but the timing was suspicious. And a board member who questioned Pamela's finances. His business mysteriously failed after she happened to mention tax irregularities to certain county officials. She's been getting away with this for years. Fear keeps people quiet. Most just pay the fines and follow the rules. The few who fight, they usually move away. You're the first one who stayed to fight. After Frank left, I sat on my porch, watching storm clouds gather over Pine Lake. The water was turning dark gray, reflecting the turbulent sky. Lightning flickered in the distance, and thunder rolled across the mountains like artillery. Pamela Harrington had spent years building a corrupt empire, bullying neighbors, and stealing from families who trusted her. She'd turned community governance into a protection racket, and nobody had successfully fought back. But she'd made a critical mistake. She'd assumed I was just another victim she could intimidate into submission. She didn't know I was the granddaughter of a Navy captain who'd taught me that battles are won by the prepared, not the powerful. My phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. Filed a lawsuit this afternoon. Water rights declaration recorded with County A. Process server is delivering to Pamela tomorrow morning. Get ready, things are about to get very interesting. Primera loot at TA 8093 water rights certificate. Safely stored in a fireproof safe. That yellowed piece of paper, signed by a homesteader 130 years ago, was about to destroy everything Pamela Harrington had built on lies. Tomorrow, the war would escalate, but tonight, I allowed myself one small smile, because in 24 hours, Pamela was going to learn that she'd been fighting for control of a lake she never owned, and every threat, every fine, every act of harassment she'd committed had been documented, time-stamped, and filed with the court. She'd built her empire on a foundation of sand, and the tide was about to come in. The process server found Pamela at her lakeside mansion at 9:07 a.m. I know because I was parked down the road with binoculars and a good camera, documenting every moment for legal purposes. Also, I'll admit, for personal satisfaction, Pamela emerged from her sprawling craftsman-style home wearing tennis whites and designer sunglasses, clearly heading to the country club. The process server, a young woman with a poker face that could win championships, handed her the legal documents with professional efficiency. Pamela Harrington, you've been served. I watched through my zoom lens as Pamela's face cycled through confusion, shock, and then pure rage. She tore open the envelope, read the first page, and screamed loud enough that I could hear it from 50 yards away. This is fraudulent. You can't just claim you own a lake. The process server, unbothered, handed her 3 more envelopes: lawsuit for damages, water rights declaration, and cease and desist order. Have a nice day, ma'am. Pamela stood in her driveway, designer tennis outfit and all, clutching papers that detailed exactly how she'd been selling something she never owned. Her face was the color of old milk, and her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. I could see her pacing, shouting into her phone, probably calling her lawyer. Richard, her husband, emerged from the house, looking confused. I watched them argue on their manicured lawn, Pamela gesturing wildly at the legal documents, while Richard's expression morphed from confusion to horror. By noon, my phone started ringing. Frank Chun first. Ms. Pierce, Pamela's calling an emergency HOA meeting for tonight. She's telling everyone you're trying to steal the lake with fraudulent documents. Let me guess, I'm not invited. Actually, she's demanding you attend. Says you need to face the community you're trying to rob. Perfect. Pamela wanted a public confrontation. She was going to get one. Just not the kind she expected. Tell her I'll be there. 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock at the community center. Barbara... It's going to be hostile. She's got people believing you're some con artist with fake documents. Then I'll bring proof even they can't deny. I called Sarah. Pamela's called an emergency HOA meeting for tonight. She's positioning me as the villain. Sarah laughed. Perfect. She's about to commit defamation in front of witnesses. I'll be there with enough documentation to bury her. Bring the original water rights certificate. And Barbara, dress professional. You want to look like the legitimate property owner, not the mountain hermit she's portraying. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since my divorce hearing. I put on my best business outfit, navy blazer, professional slacks, minimal makeup, pulled my hair back in a no-nonsense ponytail. When I looked in the mirror, I saw exactly what I needed. A serious woman who wasn't going to be pushed around. The Pine Lake Community Center was packed when I arrived at 6:55 p.m. Every chair filled, people standing along the walls, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. 47 families, all convinced I was trying to steal their lake access. Pamela stood at the podium like a general addressing troops, wearing a power suit that probably costs more than my truck. When I walked through the door, the murmur of conversation died into hostile silence. Well, Pamela announced, with theatrical disgust, the thief has arrived. I walked calmly to the front row, where Sarah had saved me a seat. Set my briefcase down with deliberate care. the leather document folder Grandpa, Tom, had used. 4 important papers sat on my lap like a shield. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pamela began, her voice dripping with righteous fury. "We're here because Barbara Pierce has launched a fraudulent lawsuit claiming she owns Pine Lake, not just her property, the entire lake." Gasps and angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. "She's trying to steal our homes, our dock rights, our community investment, using fake historical documents to claim ownership of a communal lake that's belonged to this community for decades." A man in the back stood up. "How can someone just claim they own a lake?" "They can't," Pamela said firmly, "which is why we're fighting this in court. But I want Miss Pierce to explain to all of you face to face why she thinks she can steal what belongs to this community." All eyes turned to me. The hostility was palpable, rolling off the crowd like heat waves. These were people who believed their home values, their lifestyle, their community was under attack from an outsider. I stood slowly, took a breath, and met Pamela's smug gaze. "I'm not here to steal anything. I'm here to share the truth about who actually owns what." "Lies, Pamela. Espat, you have fabricated—" "Let her speak." Frank Chun interrupted from the side. "If her claims are fraudulent, let her hang herself with her own words." Pamela smiled like a shark. "By all means. Miss Pierce, please tell us how you magically own a lake you just moved to." I opened Grandpa Tom's folder and pulled out the water rights certificate. Held it up so everyone could see the yellowed paper, official seals, and decades of age evident in its condition. "This is a water rights certificate issued April 3, 1893, to homesteader Jacob Morrison. It grants exclusive rights to all water, lakebed, and surface use of Pine Lake. In 1953, my grandfather, Thomas Pierce, purchased these rights from the Morrison family estate for $4,800. "That's a forgery," Pamela announced confidently. "It's recorded with Pike County." Sarah stood, pulling out her own documents, verified by 3 separate attorneys across 3 decades, authenticated by the Colorado State Archives, and confirmed by the county clerk's office last Tuesday. Sarah distributed copies to people in the front row. "Every one of you can verify this with the county? The document number is right here. Filed in 1953, never contested, legally binding." The room's energy shifted. Confusion replacing certainty. People passing papers back, reading the official seals and signatures. "So what?" Pamela's voice rose with desperation. "Even if your grandfather bought some ancient water rights, they expire. We formed this HOA legally. Water rights don't expire in Colorado," Sarah said calmly, "especially not senior rights dating to 1893. They're among the most protected property rights in Western water law." "This is ridiculous," Pamela shouted. "We've had an HOA for 17 years. We've maintained these docks, organized lake activities, managed communal resources on property you don't own," I interrupted. "Every dock around this lake, including yours, Mrs. Harrington, is built on lakebed that belongs to me. My grandfather allowed peaceful use out of courtesy. That courtesy ended when you demolished my boathouse, stole my boat, and tried to drive me from property I legally inherited." A woman in the middle row stood up. "Are you saying our docks are illegal?" "I'm saying they were built without permission from the actual property owner. But that's not why I'm here." I pulled out more documents. "I'm here because Mrs. Harrington has been collecting money from many of you, selling dock rights to Mountain Marine Ventures for a luxury marina development." Confused looks around the room. Several people glanced at Pamela, whose face was turning an interesting shade of purple. 17 families in this room have already paid Mountain Marine for dock rights," Sarah continued, pulling out the contracts. "You paid for rights to a lake Mrs. Harrington doesn't own and has no authority to sell. That's confidential business information," Pamela snapped. "It's fraud," Sarah countered. "You've collected over $100,000 in commissions, selling lake access you don't control. Every contract you signed is fraudulent misrepresentation." The room erupted, people shouting questions at Pamela, families who'd paid Mountain Marine demanding explanations, the carefully controlled meeting dissolving into chaos. You're working with a marina developer. Frank Chun stood, face red with betrayal. You told us that was just a rumor. You said we'd vote on any development. I'm facilitating economic opportunity, Pamela defended weakly. You're earning $400,000 in consulting fees, I said. Pulling out that contract to... You've been systematically buying out neighbors while lying about who owns the lake. Planning to deliver all dock rights to a developer, except you can't deliver rights to property you don't own. This is slander, Pamela screamed. I'm protecting this community's interests by demolishing my property, stealing my boat, filing false police reports. I pulled out photos of the destroyed boathouse, the 2 a.m. dock theft, the slashed tires. I have video evidence of HOA contractors trespassing on my property. I have documentation of every fine you've invented, and I have testimony from families. You've threatened and intimidated. The room had gone silent again, but this time the hostility had redirected. Away from me. Toward Pamela. Richard Harrington stood up in the back. Pamela, what the hell have you done? Pamela's composure finally cracked completely. I was trying to save this community. That Pierce property is prime lakefront, worth millions if developed properly. Her grandfather was a stubborn old man who refused progress. I was creating opportunities for all of us. By lying to us. A woman near the front stood, trembling with rage. We paid Mountain Marine $18,000 because you said the development was approved. You said it was a good investment. It would have been if this outsider hadn't shown up with fake documents. Pamela pointed at me. Like I was something dirty, she'd stepped in. The documents are real, Frank Chun said quietly. I can see the authenticity from here. The seals, the age, the official recordings. She's telling the truth, Pamela. Which means you've been lying to us for months, years. I corrected. My grandfather documented your harassment attempts going back 5 years. Every time he questioned HOA finances or refused to participate in your schemes, you increased his violation fines. Sarah distributed more papers. Thomas Pierce kept meticulous records. HOA financial irregularities, improper assessments, secret development negotiations. It's all documented. Pamela grabbed her briefcase, her hands shaking so badly she could barely close the latches. I don't have to listen to this. My attorney will destroy your fraudulent case. Your attorney is Douglas Grinke, Sarah said, who's currently being investigated by the Colorado Bar Association for misconduct in 3 separate cases. Good luck with that! Pamela fled the community center like her hair was on fire, heels clicking rapidly on the concrete floor. Richard Harrington followed, but not before turning to the room and saying, I knew nothing about this. I'll be contacting my own attorney. After they left, the community center felt like a bomb had gone off. People processing betrayal, anger, confusion. Frank Chun approached me cautiously. Ms. Pierce, ... Barbara. What happens now? Do you really own all our docks? I took a breath, feeling the weight of 47 families waiting for my answer. Legally, yes. Every structure built on the lakebed required permission I never gave. But I'm not here to destroy this community. What do you want? Someone called from the back. Same thing my grandfather wanted. Peace, fair treatment, honest governance. He allowed you to use the lake because he believed in community. I'll do the same but under new terms. Sarah pulled out the proposal we'd drafted. We're offering all current residents formal lake access agreements. Minimal fees, covering maintenance and insurance. Transparent accounting, no HOA fees, paying for one person's luxury lifestyle. What about the dock rights we bought from Mountain Marine? The woman who'd paid $18,000 asked. Those contracts are void. You paid for something Pamela couldn't deliver. That's between you and her, legally. But I'm offering you legitimate access at a fraction of what you paid. Frank looked at the proposal. This is actually ... reasonable. More reasonable than what we've been paying Pamela. My grandfather loved this lake. I said. He wanted to protect it, not profit from it. I'm honoring that, but I won't tolerate harassment, theft, or corruption. The HOA as it exists is dissolved. What we build going forward has to be based on truth. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Questions, concerns, anger at Pamela, cautious hope about the future. By the time people left, 17 families had signed preliminary access agreements. Others wanted time to think, to verify my claims, to process the betrayal. Frank was the last to leave. Barbara, you could have destroyed us, legally evicted everyone, sold the lake rights for millions. Why didn't you? Because that's not who I am. And it's not who Grandpa Tom was. He fought to protect this place, not exploit it. Frank shook my hand. You're a better person than Pamela deserved to face. Driving home, I felt the weight of the evening settling on my shoulders. I'd won the battle, exposed Pamela's corruption, and offered the community a path forward. But I knew this wasn't over. Sarah called as I pulled into my driveway. Barbara, you did great tonight, but you need to know Pamela is going to retaliate. People like her don't accept defeat gracefully. Let her try. I've got documentation, legal precedent, and the truth. Truth doesn't stop desperate people from doing desperate things. Install more cameras. Vary your routines. And Barbara, don't go anywhere alone for a while. Sarah was right to warn me. Pamela's retaliation came faster and more vicious than I'd expected. At 3:47 a.m., my security system screamed awake with motion alerts from 6 different cameras simultaneously. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the feeds. 3 vehicles had surrounded my cabin. Pamela's white Lexus and 2 pickup trucks I didn't recognize. 6 people, all wearing dark clothes and ski masks, were spreading out across my property. I dialed 911 with shaking hands. This is Barbara Pierce at 2847 Lakeshore Drive. 6 masked intruders on my property. Multiple vehicles. I think they're trying to break in. Deputies are 20 minutes away, ma'am. Can you get to a safe room? I had no safe room. Just a cabin with thin walls and too many windows. But I had something else. Grandpa Tom's old marine air horn. The kind designed to alert ships in fog, loud enough to wake the dead. I grabbed it from the hall closet, positioned myself in the bedroom with the door locked, and aimed the air horn out the window. The blast that followed was like a freight train's scream echoing across the lake. Through my security feeds, I watched the intruders freeze, then scatter like startled deer. The sound had been so unexpected, so loud, that their coordinated attack dissolved into chaos. 2 ran for the trucks. Pamela could tell by her distinctive gait, even in dark, clothes stumbled backward in shock. But 1 figure kept coming toward my front door, carrying what looked like a crowbar. I hit the air horn, again, and again, each blast echoing across Pine Lake like an alarm bell. Lights started appearing in neighboring cabins. Frank Choon's porch lights snapped on. Other families emerging onto their docks to investigate the noise. Pamela's secret midnight attack was becoming very public. The figure with the crowbar finally retreated. All 6 intruders piled into their vehicles and fled down the mountain road, tires spraying gravel, just as headlights from Frank's truck appeared around the bend. Frank found me on my porch, still clutching the air horn, adrenaline making my hands shake like leaves in wind. Barbara, what happened? That sound woke up half the lake. I showed him the security footage. His face hardened as he watched 6 masked figures surrounding my cabin, clearly coordinating an attack. That's Pamela's Lexus. I'd recognize that. Vanity plate anywhere. Deputies arrived 13 minutes later. I handed them the USB drive with full video evidence. License plates, coordinated movement patterns, even a moment when 1 figure's ski mask slipped enough to show blonde hair identical to Pamela's. Miss Pierce, this is attempted burglary at minimum, Deputy Martinez said, reviewing the footage. With the masks and coordination, possibly conspiracy to commit assault. We'll be visiting Mrs. Harrington within the hour. By sunrise, Pamela was in custody. Her two accomplices turned out to be her brother, an HOA board member, were arrested at their homes. The ski masks, crowbars, and even receipts for security equipment were found in Pamela's garage. Sarah called at 7 a.m., her voice mixing triumph with concern. Barbara Pamela's been charged with attempted burglary, conspiracy, and violating the restraining order we just got approved yesterday. But there's something else you need to know. What? Mountain Marine Ventures is suing Pamela for fraud. They paid her $300,000 in consulting fees, and now they've learned she was selling rights to a lake she doesn't own. Their contract has penalty clauses that could bankrupt her. Good. There's more. 17 families who paid Mountain Marine are forming a class action lawsuit against Pamela. Frank Chun is organizing it. They want their money back plus damages for fraudulent misrepresentation. How much are we talking? Combined? Over $400,000 in direct damages, plus whatever punitive damages a jury awards. Barbara, Pamela's not just facing criminal charges. She's facing financial annihilation. I felt no satisfaction in her destruction, only relief that the threat was finally contained. What about the HOA? What happens to the organization? With Pamela gone and the board members facing charges, it's functionally dissolved. Which brings me to our next decision point. How do you want to structure lake access going forward? Sarah and I spent the next week drafting the Pine Lake Community Agreement. Not an HOA with unchecked power, but a cooperative arrangement respecting property rights while ensuring fair lake access. Key provisions: annual access fee of $300 per household, covering maintenance and insurance. All finances managed by independent accounting firm with quarterly public reports. Democratic voting on lake-related issues, but my water rights remain protected. Zero tolerance for harassment or intimidation. The agreement specifically prohibited luxury development, commercial marina operations, or any use that would fundamentally change the lake's character. Grandpa Tom had protected wilderness, not subdivided it for profit. By mid-May, 39 of 47 families had signed the agreement. The 8 holdouts were either moving away or still processing the betrayal of Pamela's lies. Frank Chun became the voluntary community coordinator, organizing lake cleanup days and family fishing tournaments. You know, Frank said during one of our planning meetings, Pamela was right about one thing. This lake does need organization, but she confused organization with control. Grandpa Tom believed communities work best when built on respect instead of fear. Your grandfather was a wise man, and you're honoring that wisdom. The transformation was remarkable. Without Pamela's constant threats and arbitrary fines, the community breathed easier. People fixed their docks without fear of violation notices. Kids played freely at the swimming area. Neighbors helped neighbors instead of reporting them. Property values actually increased. Contrary to Pamela's warnings, turned out buyers valued a functional community over a dictatorial Mia and Jake visited their first weekend in late May. Watching them explore the cabin, fish off the dock, and kayak across water my grandfather had protected for decades. It felt like Grandpa Tom's legacy was finally complete. "Dad, this place is amazing," Mia said, helping me grill burgers on the porch. "Why did that lady want to steal it?" "Because some people see beautiful things and think about profit instead of preservation," I explained. Grandpa Tom taught me that real wealth isn't money, it's protecting what matters. Jake emerged from the boathouse, excited. "Mom, there's a boat in here. Can we fix it?" The Chris Craft. I'd reclaimed it from county impound after Pamela's arrest, paying storage fees but refusing to acknowledge her fraudulent fines. The hull bore scratches from its rough handling, but the bones were solid. How about this summer? We restore it together. You too can learn what Grandpa Tom taught me about boats, patience, and doing things right. Mia grinned. "Will you teach us the air horn trick too?" That was legendary. Frank told us you scared off 6 bad guys with just noise. Sometimes the best weapon is the one nobody expects. Pamela's trial came in August. Sarah attended as my representative while I stayed at the lake with my kids, teaching them to sail and rebuild engines. The verdict came via text. Guilty on all counts. 18 months prison plus restitution. She broke down crying when the judge read sentencing. I felt no joy in her imprisonment, only sadness at the waste. Pamela had spent years building power through cruelty, when she could have built community through cooperation. She'd seen neighbors as obstacles instead of opportunities for connection. The civil suits followed. Mountain Marin recovered their consultation fees plus damages. The class action lawsuit awarded affected families their money back, times 3 for punitive damages. Pamela's assets, the lakeside mansion, luxury cars, vacation properties, were sold to cover Jedmonds. Richard Harrington divorced her before sentencing, claiming he'd known nothing about her schemes. I wasn't sure I believed him, but the courts apparently did. By September, Pine Lake felt reborn. The community Labor Day barbecue drew every family, with burgers, boats, and laughter replacing years of tension and fear. Kids who'd been taught to be suspicious of neighbors were playing together freely. Frank raised a toast during the evening gathering to Barbara Pierce, who could have destroyed this community, but chose to rebuild it instead, and to Captain Tom Pierce, who protected these waters for 70 years, so his granddaughter could continue the legacy. 40 families raised glasses and beer bottles in agreement. I felt tears stinging my eyes, the weight of Grandpa Tom's trust finally lifting. I'd honored his memory and protected what he loved. But the most meaningful moment came from an unexpected source. Emma Chun, Frank's granddaughter, and one of Mia's new friends, approached me shyly. Señora, I'm Barbara. I'm writing an essay for school about courage. Can I interview you about fighting the HOA? I'm not sure I'm the best example of courage. Emma, my grandpa says you are. He says real courage is standing up for what's right, even when everyone thinks you're wrong. You did that. We sat on the dock while Emma asked questions about facing fear, gathering evidence, and believing in truth, even when lies seem more powerful. Her earnest curiosity reminded me why this fight had mattered. The most important thing, I told her, is that systems only work when people hold them accountable. HOAs, governments, organizations there run by humans who make mistakes, or, sometimes, who choose greed over integrity. If good people stay silent, bad people win. So, you won because you didn't stay silent? I won because I had documentation, legal precedent, and a lawyer who believed in justice. But mostly, I won because Grandpa Tom had prepared the ground years ago. He kept those water rights safe, waiting for the right moment when they'd matter. Emma wrote furiously in her notebook. Do you think Mrs. Harrington was always bad? I think she started with good intentions that got corrupted by power and money. That's what makes corruption dangerous. It happens gradually, one small compromise at a time. By the end, she couldn't see the difference between protecting the community and controlling it. After Emma left, I sat on the dock watching the sunset paint Pine Lake in shades of gold and crimson. The Chris-craft, now fully restored with my kids' help, bobbed gently at the dock. Laughter echoed from the swimming area where families were enjoying the last warm evening of summer. My phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. Final update. Pamela's appeals all denied. Case closed. You can finally rest. But I wasn't tired anymore. Somewhere between fighting for my inheritance and building community, I'd found purpose again. The divorce that had broken me, the struggle to support my kids, the years of feeling like I was barely surviving it had all led to this. October brought the first snow, dusting the pine trees around Pine Lake in white that sparkled like diamonds in morning sun. Mia and Jake spent their fall break helping me winterize the cabin and prepare the dock for ice season. Dad, can we stay here for Christmas? Jake asked, his breath puffing in the cold mountain air. Your mum and I haven't worked out the schedule yet. I already asked her, Mia said. She thinks it's a good idea. Says we should have traditions at both homes. The word home hit me harder than expected. This wasn't just my inheritance anymore. It was becoming their place. Roots growing deeper than I'd imagined. We spent Christmas morning opening presents by the fireplace, while snow fell steadily outside. In the afternoon, Frank and his family joined us for dinner. Emma interviewed me again for a follow-up essay about justice in small communities. Ms. Barba, my teacher wants to know if you think what happened here could happen in other HOAs. Absolutely. Absolutely? Corruption thrives anywhere there's power without accountability. HOAs are particularly vulnerable because they govern people's homes, the most important asset most families have. How do people protect themselves? Document everything. Attend meetings, ask questions about finances, build relationships with neighbors, so you're not fighting alone. And remember, if something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust that instinct. By New Year's, the Pine Lake Community Agreement was functioning smoothly. Transparent accounting showed exactly where the modest fees went: dock maintenance, insurance, winter road clearing. No mysterious consulting fees or inflated contracts. January brought a letter from Mountain Marine Ventures. They'd abandoned the luxury marina project, citing unexpected complications with property rights. Translation: they'd learned you can't build a business on stolen land. But they included an interesting proposal. Would I be interested in selling carefully limited, commercial kayak and fishing guide permits, controlled access that would bring revenue without destroying the lake's character? I brought it to the community meeting. After discussion, we agreed to a pilot program. Maximum 6 guides, strict environmental standards, all revenues split between conservation efforts and community improvements. The transformation felt complete, from Pamela's dictatorship to democratic cooperation, from corruption to transparency, from fear to community. February brought unexpected news. Sarah called with excitement, clear in her voice. Barbara, the Colorado HOA Oversight Committee wants you to testify about HOA reform legislation. Your case has become the poster child for what's wrong with unchecked HOA power. I'm not a policy expert. You're a homeowner who fought corruption and won. That makes you exactly the right person. The committee is proposing mandatory financial audits, limits on fines, and stronger protections for homeowners who request documents. When? Next month in Denver. They'll cover travel and hotel. Barbara, this could change HOA governance across Colorado. Your grandfather's water rights protected your property. This legislation could protect thousands of families. The testimony felt surreal. Standing in the state capitol, telling legislators about Pamela's harassment, fraudulent contracts, and attempted burglary, explaining how documentation and legal precedent had been my weapons against institutional corruption. What would you say to other homeowners facing similar situations? A senator asked. Don't stay silent. These organizations have power because we give it to them, but they're not above the law. Document everything. Build alliances. Find good lawyers. And remember, truth is more powerful than intimidation, even when it doesn't feel that way. The Colorado HOA Accountability Act passed in May, strengthening homeowner protections and requiring transparent accounting. The bill's sponsors named it the Captain Thomas Pierce Memorial Act, in honor of my grandfather's decades protecting property rights. By summer, life at Pine Lake had settled into comfortable routine. My boat repair business was thriving, with work from grateful neighbors. Mia and Jake spent entire summers at the cabin, learning sailing, ecology, and the value of fighting for what's right. Frank Chun organized the first annual Captain Tom Pierce fishing tournament, bringing families together in friendly competition. Emma won the youth division, reeling in a 12-pound trout while laughing with friends, who 2 years earlier had been afraid to speak to each other. The Chris Craft became my mobile workshop, carrying tools to neighbors' docks for repairs and maintenance. The boat Pamela had tried to destroy became a symbol of community cooperation. September brought another court date, this time civil. The families defrauded by Pamela's contracts had successfully sued Mountain Marine as well, arguing the company should have verified ownership before paying consultation fees. The settlement brought each family additional compensation, Justice is slow but thorough, Frank observed during a community barbecue celebrating the settlement. Grandpa Tom used to say the same thing. He waited 70 years for his water rights to matter. I just had to wait, too. As I stood on my dock watching families enjoy the lake my grandfather had protected, I finally understood his final message. The land doesn't just have secrets. It has purpose. And sometimes that purpose is protecting what matters from people who would destroy it for profit. Pamela Harrington had seen Pine Lake as an asset to exploit. Grandpa Tom had seen it as a legacy to preserve. The difference between those visions was the difference between corruption and integrity. My phone buzzed. Text from Jake Mom says, "We can stay for Labor Day weekend. Can we take the Chris Craft to the far end of the lake? Emma wants to see where the eagles nest." I smiled, looking at the restored boat bobbing at my dock, at the community thriving around clean water, at the future grandpa Tom had fought to protect. "Absolutely," I texted back. "Pack the binoculars and the good camera. Let's go see those eagles." Because that's what this had all been about. Not defeating Pamela, though that was necessary. Not winning legal battles, though those were satisfying. It was about protecting beauty, so the next generation could experience it. The sun set over Pine Lake in colors that paintings could never capture. Children's laughter mixed with the cry of eagles overhead. The Chris Craft rocked gently in the evening breeze, and somewhere I liked to think Grandpa Tom was smiling, knowing his granddaughter had honored his trust and protected what he loved. The war for Pine Lake was over. The real work of building community was just beginning, and I was ready for it. Because receipts, documentation, and legal rights matter. But what matters more is what you do with them after you win. You build something beautiful that outlasts corruption, something true that defeats lies, something worth protecting for the next generation. That's the real victory. That's the real legacy. And that's what Grandpa Tom taught me when he left me a lake, a lockbox, and the courage to fight for what's right. Have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare? A property dispute? Someone who thought they could steamroll you because they had money and you didn't? Drop your story in the comments. Let's build a library of how regular people beat corrupt systems. And if this story mattered to you, if it reminded you that good people can still win, hit that subscribe button because I've got more stories like this. Stories about the little guy outsmarting the machine. Stories with receipts. Next week, when City Council tried to steal our family farm for Amazon warehouse, they had no idea about great-grandpa's mining claims. Thanks for watching. If this episode made you laugh or shake your head at HOA madness, hit that like button and drop your opinion below. We post HOA Karen Chaos and Neighborhood Showdowns every week, so be sure to subscribe to catch the next unbelievable story. And remember, keep your receipts, all of them, because you never know when a 130-year-old water rights certificate will change your life, and when it does, you'll be ready. This is Barbara Pierce, signing off. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and never let the bastards win.